The very first thing we need to discuss before we even get into the nitty-gritty of how to memorize is what is the game plan here. So I would recommend starting from the 30th juz, perhaps picking off the 29th juz as well, but then I would stop and I would go to the first juz and continue on from there until you finish. I was taught by subcontinental teachers, and they taught me that there are three fundamental things that you will be doing as a memorization student: sabak, sabki, and daur. Sabak is the new material that you learn every lesson and recite to your teacher. It might be half a page, it might be a few lines, it might be one page. Sabki is the revising of all of the recent material that you have learnt, the last few pages, typically from the same juz, the same chapter that you are memorizing at the time. So for example, if you are on page 6 of juz 5, the first 5 pages of juz 5 would be your sabki. Daur is your long-term revision. You would typically want to be doing about half a juz to a full juz every time and cycling through all of the historic juz that you have committed to your memory. Now, in terms of your daily and weekly routines, this is how I would do it. For your daily routine, I would have 45 minutes memorization in the morning, focused on your sabak, the new stuff. So you'd have a class for 2 to 3 hours. We used to have a class for 3 hours in the evening where you revise your sabak that you've learnt in the morning, and then you recite it to your teacher, and you're only allowed a maximum of 2 mistakes. After that, you don't really know it, and you should be sent back and to do it again until you only have 2 mistakes at max, and ideally no mistakes. Then, in the same class, you start working on your sabki and your daur. For your sabki, you should always revise your last 3 sabaks, i.e. your last 3 new pieces that you have learned. And then you should cycle through the different quarters of that same juz you are in as part of your sabki. Let me give you an example. So let's say you are in the 8th juz, you're halfway through the 3rd quarter of the 8th juz. So you would definitely be revising your last 3 sabaks, which would basically be everything from the half onwards. And then you would do one of the other 2 quarters from the first half that you've already memorized. And then the next day, you'd again do your last 3 sabaks, and you would pick off the other quarter from that same juz. For daur, you really want to be doing about half a juz at a time while you are still under 10 juz memorized, because that way you can cycle through everything you know in about 20 lessons. But once you're past 10 juz, you really should be reading 1 juz at least of revision every single lesson, because you now have much more to cover every single time. Of the 3, sabak, sabki, daur, your sabki is actually the most important. Learning new stuff is actually quite easy after a while, as this is just your short-term memory, and daur is just refreshing on stuff that is already in your long-term memory. But sabki is the stuff that is transitioning from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. That's why it's hard. And sometimes you will revise something that you have learned and you will feel like you're having to learn it all over again, and it can even feel harder the second time round. But that's fine. That's how it should be. After class, you should spend about 30 minutes or so just looking at your next sabak. You may not necessarily learn it very well because you're not fresh, but at least you've got your eye in and you've got the general gist of what you're going to learn. So all in all, you probably end up spending about 4 hours a day memorizing. No one said it was going to be easy. Every week, I would recommend lessons at least 3 times a week, but ideally 4 to 5 lessons a week. Keep that up and you should be done in about 3 to 4 years. You can chill out a bit and do a little bit less and you get it done in about 7 to 8 years, but genuinely it is better to go harder and faster, as that way you will learn it more easily whilst you're younger, and your memorization is a muscle, so you would rather train it hard and make sure that you get it done quickly, and overall your hifz will be stronger as a result of that as well. And folks, I know this might sound daunting and overwhelming and you might feel that you're not up for this right now. Don't worry too much about that. Just get it started and just start the routine, and actually you will find that it's very, very doable. Memorization is absolutely compatible with everyday schooling. It's just a little bit harder work, and I would recommend doing it this way and not taking that time out of school for just doing hifz for a few years, because that sets you back educationally as well. And every time you finish a juz, you shouldn't continue on until you've fully revised and read that entire juz together in its entirety to someone. The tolerance for mistakes is up to you and your teacher, but I would probably only allow 3 mistakes per quarter, if that. And ideally, you would want to have less than 3 mistakes for the entire juz. Every time you finish 5 juz, it's worth just taking a few weeks to focus exclusively on daur and tightening up all of the historic stuff before continuing onwards, because every 5 juz it's a bit of a landmark and you want to tighten everything up. Okay, now we know the macro game plan, let's actually get into the mechanics of memorization of verses themselves. The basic idea is absolutely nailing the pronunciation and how you recite the verse the first time, because that will just stick in your memory regardless. So make the first time the right time. And then once you've got the pronunciation right, take things in very small chunks, individual words, and add on more words each time as you are reciting and repeating, and lots and lots and lots of repetition. I would typically recommend 10 times each verse.